I feel as if I should do some more work on this feminist science thing I started a couple of weeks back. So I'll have another shot at that. What I was saying in the first videos I made is that it's really prompted by this quote from Lucy Irigaray, in which she questions the status of Einstein's E equals mc squared equation, basically saying it's a sexed equation. The implication being, as I'm choosing to read it, that the speed of light varies according to whether you're a feminist or not. She didn't say that. That's a reading of what she said, which I think is wrong, but that's what I'm kind of holding up as a tagline for this video. So in the last video, to try and find a way into that idea, I was talking about facts and different kinds of empirical facts, or different empires in which facts might be said to have some kind of sovereignty. The classical empirical fact which exists in this transcendent, objective, absolute world of, as I say, transcendent truths, and the speed of light, which I think is probably a kind of poster boy version of that. Social facts coming out of Durkheim, which are the facts that exist between people. You know, things like the facts that emerge from population statistics or opinion polls, or those kind of things. They're facts, and they have, you know, they have a certain kind of solidity to them, and within the particular empire of the social that they exist, they are as solid as anything else. And then what I referred to as subjective facts, which only exist within the limited empire of individual understanding and have no status beyond that. So you might think of those as tastes or opinions or beliefs. They don't translate into those wider realms, but they still have status as long as they're not extracted from that narrow context of the subjective individual. Right, so I need to get that in place, I think, as a building block for later on. But what I want to try and do in this one quickly is the easy bit in a way, which is the social culture or science culture and feminism, feminist politics in relation to science culture, rather than the claims that science makes. Yeah, I think I can talk about that in 4 minutes. Basically, the idea of this is that science and technology is a gender-biased area of knowledge and practice. You know, because of historical reasons, because of reasons to do with how economics works, because of reasons to do with how families work, because of, you know, the history of states and the history of genders within states. The sciences and the industries linked to those sciences are essentially male domains. You know, I don't know if it's still the case, but it must be very close on. Most graduates from science degrees are men. You know, particularly the hard sciences, and I'll come back to what I mean by that in a bit, are mostly men. Physics graduates, maths graduates, chemistry graduates are mostly male. The kind of postgraduate work that's engaged in is engaged in by men. Most research in the sciences is carried out by men, and the industries that research serves, things like pharmaceuticals, petrochemicals, plastics, yeah, all the kind of industries that fall out of the sciences, information technology industries, are again mostly controlled and managed by men. Obviously I don't want to get into that whole thing about that, but it's just it's worth noting for this, because there are certain effects which fall out of that. Okay, the first effect is that what that would mean is that the agendas that the sciences tend to address, you know, what kinds of questions it asks, what kinds of hypotheses it generates, what it considers to be important as a set of agendas, would be set by the people who are practicing it, of course, not for any Machiavellian or not for any Machiavellian reasons, but just because that's, you know, people develop their interests, don't they? That's how it works. And so inevitably, if it's a male-dominated practice, the kinds of agendas that will be addressed in that practice will be male-dominated as well. Okay, the second thing that comes out of that is about definitions. And this kind of relates to the first point. And it's really a definition of what constitutes good scientific practice or a valid area of study. Because there are areas of study which are just not considered valid. I'll perhaps talk about those in a separate video. Phoebe, come on! But given that the science and the technology industries are male dominated, it's inevitably going to be the case that it's mostly men who set the terms of what constitutes valid areas of study. So not just the agendas in terms of research programs and what hypotheses might be explored, but also the areas of study in general. What is considered to be science activity. And you can kind of see that, because when we look at what prototypical, I have to do something about prototypicality at some point. When you consider what prototypical science is, it tends to be those areas which deal with, materials, physics and chemistry. We imagine laboratories, we imagine data sheets, we imagine double-blind trials. There's a certain prescribed area which marks out what the centre of that practice might consist of. And other kinds of practices to do with the human sciences, biology even, but also things like psychology and any kind of science which is to do with slightly more messy data sets tends not to be thought of as central or as prototypical. It might still be science, but it's not at the centre of what we think science to be. It isn't part of our stereotype or our prototype or our archetype of what a science activity might look like. And one of the reasons for that might be that the stereotypes, the prototypes, the archetypes are set through historical processes involving predominantly male scientists following their agendas, which in turn are a product of their interests, which are a product of their embeddedness within a society which does certain things with male and female interests. Alright, so the agenda there is, and this is not, I'm not anywhere near the speed of light here, but the agenda there in terms of what I'm looking at is that science itself as a defined activity and as a conceptualized activity, where we think of it in our minds, in our brains, is partly determined by historical forces, and those historical forces are to a certain extent gendered. Yeah, I think that'll do for now. This little construction, actually, you probably saw it go a bit dark there. There's this weird construction that's in this little nature park that I walk the dogs in sometimes. Quite nice, isn't it, that? It's been woven out of live, whatever they are, trees.